The final days of Adolf Hitler were marked by the weight of a crumbling empire and the impending reality of defeat. In a dimly lit bunker beneath Berlin, Hitler paced back and forth, his mind racing as the sounds of war echoed above him. Once the fearless leader of the Nazi regime, now he was a man consumed by fear and desperation. With his empire falling apart and his most trusted generals either dead or captured, Hitler was left to contemplate how it all went so wrong. He muttered to himself, as if trying to make sense of the catastrophe. How did it come to this? My beloved Germany, my loyal followers. His words were filled with sorrow, almost disbelief. As the Allied forces closed in on Berlin, the reality of defeat was too much to bear. The once charismatic dictator now saw no future for his vision of a grand Aryan empire. Hitler's mind shifted from strategy to survival, but deep down, he knew the end was inevitable. No escape plan could work. No last-minute heroics could save the Reich. The Soviets were closing in, and there would be no mercy for the leader of the Nazi Party. His options were limited: face capture or take matters into his own hands. He chose the latter. Alone in his study, Hitler sat with a pistol in his hand. The weight of the gun mirrored the burden of his failure. In that final moment, he whispered to himself, "It's over. I cannot face defeat." And with a last, bitter sigh, he raised the gun to his head, pulled the trigger, and ended his life. A single gunshot echoed through the bunker, marking the fall of the man who once dreamed of world domination. What followed was chaos. As Hitler's lifeless body was discovered, his inner circle knew they had to act fast. Hitler's closest generals, including those who had long doubted his decisions, scrambled to cover up his death. They understood that his body must never be found by the Allies, for the enemy would desecrate it and use it as a symbol of their victory. The plan was simple but secretive. A group of soldiers was tasked with wrapping Hitler's body, hiding any identifiable features, and burying him in a location that no one would ever uncover. A general, voice low and serious, commanded the group. "We will bury him in an undisclosed location, away from prying eyes. His body will never be found." The soldiers followed orders, careful and quiet as they took the body away in the dead of night, digging a grave at a remote spot where history would not reach. As dawn broke, the Nazi leadership crafted an official narrative. Publicly, they couldn't allow Hitler's death to signal the end of the movement. He had to remain a symbol, even in death. Military officials began addressing the public, telling them that Hitler had died for Germany, that his ideals would live on even after his physical body was gone. His death, they claimed, was not in vain, but a sacrifice that would continue to inspire the German people. On radio broadcasts and in newspapers, the propaganda machine went into overdrive. Ceremonial events were held where soldiers saluted, standing in rigid formation, as though nothing had changed. Crowds gathered in a mixture of grief and confusion, unsure of what the future held for Germany. They were told, again and again, that Hitler's sacrifice would never be forgotten, that his leadership had shaped the nation forever. But as the war raged on and Germany continued to crumble, these words began to feel hollow. The people no longer believed as they once did. Meanwhile, the reality of Hitler's death remained shrouded in secrecy. His final resting place was unknown, his body buried in an unmarked grave, far from the battlefield where his soldiers continued to fight for a lost cause. But despite the efforts to hide the truth, the regime was in its final hours, just like its leader. As the last vestiges of the Nazi government collapsed, the myth of Hitler's invincibility was shattered. However, even as his physical body was lost to time, his voice and ideology would continue to haunt Germany and the world. "My legacy will endure," Hitler's final thought echoed through history, a chilling reminder that the horrors of his reign would never be easily forgotten. The war eventually ended, with Germany in ruins and millions dead. The aftermath of Hitler's death led to the division of a country, the trial of his surviving officials, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding from the ashes of war. But Hitler's shadow loomed large for years, as the world wrestled with the consequences of the darkest chapter in modern history. Though Hitler was gone, his name would forever be associated with terror, destruction, and unimaginable cruelty. His dreams of a 1,000-year Reich had crumbled in mere years, but the lessons of his rise and fall would shape the world for generations to come. And as history continued to unfold, the question remained, would the world ever truly move beyond the horrors of his legacy?